Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all, and thank you for joining us for this, the second of our special interest group for sustainability and regenerative practice, brought to you by ECIS and the team. We're delighted to be here again and to continue our conversation. I'll give you a little my name's Phil Keach. I'm the head of sustainability at the International School Luxembourg. And today, Zoe will be leading us through a warm data lab practice to help us uncover our sustainability stories and to help us make more connections between each other and connections between the contexts for sustainability we find ourselves in. The dialogue at the first meeting was extremely interesting and very powerful. And out of interest, I'll be using some of the data that was provided in the feedback when I work next week at the Liberated School Spaces 2.0 session at International School Amsterdam. When I run a session with Vicky Odila from TP Bennett on sustainable school spaces. So if you provided feedback, that's been instrumental in guiding that conversation. So already you are influencing the way people are thinking in other international schools about how they approach sustainability. I think that's wonderful. The aims for our webinar today are to grow our network of connections, to introduce the warm data lab methodology. And much of our aim today is to get into storytelling. As we know, storytelling can uncover understandings of sustainability successes and challenges, helps us explain our experiences, and by listening to each other's stories, we can make connections that help us understand common successes and similar challenges. It's not always explicit, and the storytelling experience might help us uncover things we hadn't really thought about. The last thing, another aim, was to provide an idea of how things will progress, how our conversations will continue for the rest of this school year. And we can achieve that aim right now because it's as simple as this. We're going to have monthly get-togethers for the special interest group. We'll have sessions after this one in March, then again in April, May, and June. So we get that continuity of conversation, and it will be a real privilege to be part of that. And I hope you enjoy and find worthwhile today's discussions. And I'm going to hand you over to my colleague on the founding committee for the SIG, Kyle, from International School Dusseldorf. Welcome, everybody, and over to you, Kyle.
Thank you very much, Phil. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you for joining wherever you may be at the moment. We'd like to start off by inviting you to add your contact information into the chat if you'd like to connect with others via LinkedIn. We've chosen LinkedIn as sort of our digital space that we'll be using in this SIG. So that's for you to do there in the chat. Secondly, we'd love to have you share anything that you'd like to with us, upcoming opportunities at your school, anything from student initiatives on the ground to, events, strategic initiatives, all of those things that you think might be of interest to us that we can share. And with that, I will share something going on at my school. I'm the sustainability coordinator at International School of Dusseldorf. I also teach in the outdoor learning environment here across grades 4 and 5. And coming up in May, on May 9th and 10th, we will be hosting the ECIS and ISD Outdoor Learning Conference. It's a lovely chance to come and get together and see how you might benefit from a little what we're doing here. I'd love to read to you just the blurb that we've got on the website, and I'll post the website as well here in the chat in just a moment. Here's what we have. Learning outdoors is becoming more important than ever before. As we find our lives increasingly dominated by the digital era, rediscovering our connection with the natural world, which we are constantly being asked to save, is essential. The ECIS and ISD Outdoor Learning Conference will provide opportunities for us to unplug, reconnect, and explore how we can foster holistic learning opportunities for students. The conference tracks focus on the why, the how, and the what of integrating outdoor learning into the curriculum. Together, we can create a healthy, balanced, and enriched learning environment for our future generations. That's on May 9th and 10th. I'm posting the link right now. And if you are available, please come with a small delegation, would be lovely. The call for proposals has closed, but of course, you can register and participate still. Very briefly, I'll go through our 3 tracks. The first one is connection. We'll explore the benefits of outdoor learning and how it fosters wellness and learning outcomes. The second track is capacity. We'll talk about resource management, developing the spaces, and other factors. And finally, the third track is curriculum. So whether it's promoting SDG awareness, the power of play, or complementing or sometimes even driving indoor objectives, and so on and so on. So lots to learn and see. Come join us. Thank you. And with that, let's get started on our warm data lab experience. Over to you, Zoe.
Good morning or good day, everyone. I'm Zoe Badcock, and I'm the High School Sustainability Lead at the International School of Zug and Lucerne. I'm also an Environmental Systems and Societies teacher and leader. And I'd like to introduce you today to the Warm Data Lab. So Warm Data was created by Nora Bateson, and it was a way to facilitate relational, hold on to your hats, relational, trans-contextual thinking that helps people understand complexity. So in more simple terms, it's the idea that we can see multiple perspectives and connections between us as we have conversations. And if you'd like to learn more about warm data and the work of Nora Bates, and I'm going to put a link in the chat now. It's a beautiful website. They work with a lady who's a visual artist, a graphic artist, and the illustrations are really beautiful. And so what I came across this when I was asked if my school could host a warm data lab. The IB were interested in trying this out and seeing whether it would be something that could work in schools. And so we were the first IB school to host a warm data lab. And I was kind of intrigued by it, and I didn't understand it when I first came across it, and indeed experienced it. So be patient, allow yourself to be immersed in the stories that we're going to hear and tell today, and just let's see what happens and emerges for you. So I went and did a 1-week training course in London 18 months ago now, I think. And for me personally, I just found that it really helped me to see things a little bit differently. I think it improved my patience and also helped me to trust myself a little bit more after going through a bit of a rough time. So, but everyone will experience it differently. And the reason why we're using it today is that the idea is that in order for us to be change makers, one of the theories is that you have to be ready to change yourself first. And so this is about readying yourself in order to be open to make possibilities happen. So in a warm data lab, we start with a story, and I'm going to tell you a personal story. I'll introduce a question, and then in breakout rooms, you will have 3 contexts in which to consider your own stories and reflections on the question, perhaps inspired by my own story. But just remember, there's no right answers here. There's nothing that you're supposed to say. It's just what you feel is right in the moment. And this is all just about making those connections deeper or initiating them. When we do go into breakout rooms, it would be great if you could turn on your cameras, because this is about relational learning. And so that's quite difficult if you can't see the person that you're talking to. But if it's not possible, it's not possible. But please do try and turn your cameras on in the breakout rooms. Okay, so I'm going to take you on a journey back to the 1980s. Okay, so I told this story the other day to kids, and I realized that they had no idea what it was like to live without the internet, without instant gratification. And so in my world in the 1980s, I lived in a big old house in the middle of nowhere, with very little around, just the TV. And in those days, you watched a program once a week, and you watched it once a week the next week. And there was no, what's it called when you watch it all in one go? So there was none of that. And so you read books, and you watched TV, and you dreamed. And I lived in the north of England, and it was quite a bleak place. It was an reclaimed land after coal mining. And it had only been probably 10 years since it had been reclaimed. So it was really quite bleak. So I lived in this world of documentaries, because I was always nerdy. And there was I have this really strong memory of an image of, on the TV, watching a car traveling up through a mountain road in a jungle. And it just, it stuck there in the back of my head, this really verdant, rich nature experience. I had no idea where it was, other than India. So moving on, 1990s, we're starting to get into the World Wide Web had been invented, and there was some emails. And in the 1990s, I was doing my PhD in evolutionary biology, and I was working a lot at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Edinburgh and in Kew in London. And I came across an artist called Marianne North. There's a whole gallery dedicated to Marianne North in Kew Botanic Gardens. And I just loved her paintings. They were botanical paintings, but they always contained a context. They always contained people. And so you could see the detailed botanical drawings, but with the people who were living. And Marianne North was an absolutely amazing adventurer woman, doing things that weren't at all normal for a young lady to be doing at that time in the 19th century. And so that was another memory that stuck, these beautiful botanic drawings with a context. And then in the 2000s, I went off traveling, and then I ended up in India. I ended up in India teaching in a school in the south of India. But before I started working, I took a month to travel around South India, and I decided to follow the route of Marion North through the South Indian hills. And as I was doing this, I realized I was going back to that time in the documentary in the 1980s. I found these jungles in South India that were in this documentary. You know, there were elephants just over the hill, and there were tigers, and it was a moment of connection. And then as I found the places where Marion North painted some of the paintings that she did. So it was a moment of memory and connection to nature, and also a connection to all the learning and dreaming that I'd been doing over that time. And so my question to you today is, what is relevant in a changing world? Our connection as we go into the breakout rooms is what is relevant in a changing world. And you will have 3 contexts. And so just introduce yourself to each other and talk about what comes up for you in relationship to this question. Okay, and Sarah, can we have the breakout rooms opened, please? So the contexts are here. You will, the breakout rooms are actually beautifully named with the contexts that you're going to be discussing. If you click on this link that I've just shared in the chat, you will also see that rooms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have those contexts. So room 1 has culture, education, and health. Room 2, family, economy, technology. Room 3, ecology, politics, history. Room 4, identity, spirituality, religion and media. And room 5, art, law, and science. Hope you've had some really rich conversations inspired by the contexts that you found yourself in, and that you made some connections. I would like to, after you've done a sort of warm data lab, normally it would be a much longer process. So if you, it might be up to 2 hours of taking different contexts, going to different rooms, moving around. So there's a much more opportunity to actually make connections beyond the small experience that you had today. But I'd like to ask what you noticed. So part of the process of a warm data lab, Nora Bateson likes to invent words, and her word for this is somatheses. So what are you noticing from what the little experience that you had today? And please, we're small enough to just take your unmute and speak up.
So words like belonging and care, and being, like, the idea of being part of something, and love and hope. And that's something that really came out as a common thread across very different stories and different contexts.
Oh, I wish I was in that room. That sounds great. That's really positive.
Ours was then perhaps a bit similar as well, in terms of similar feelings, but very much coming under the word connection and connectedness, feeling a sense of belonging, partly for us, because often we're lone rangers a little bit, aren't we, as sustainability people, needing to feel that connectedness with all of you guys, but also with our surroundings, with our families, with people, and that connectedness enabling us to move forwards, learn new things ourselves, teach them therefore new things. We very much talked about the donut model, Kate Raworth, and partly you can kind of use that as an analogy, can't you, for we were family, economic and economy and technology. And so the donut model kind of came out of economics. But actually, if you use that analogy within all of our school context and life context, we're always trying to find the balance between the planetary boundaries and what's needed. And where's that happy balance in between? And that's sort of, I suppose, where our conversations came from.
Wow, so a little bit of an academic twist there.
Yeah, because I suppose also what was interesting in ours, like listening to your contribution, was like the sharing that then was done of resources. So within the room, there was a lot of like sharing of resources. This is what I've got and I find useful, and that was incredibly useful. And it makes me want to share more. It makes me want to sort of keep up that connection and develop it, and take it further.
So I was in the group that was, we focused on ecology. We had ecology, history and politics. We didn't really talk about the history and politics. I think ecology was definitely the easier part for us all, but it was very interesting that all of us, we were all very connected to our non-human world. But we all talked about the fact of how we find it difficult with our students, especially the older students, to connect, especially when you are teaching, you know, IBDP, exam driven, there's not much time in the curriculum to find those opportunities to help students to connect. And so we were talking about different examples of how we do it ourselves, but also what we do to try and get the students involved. So actually that experiential learning of, you know, if we can get outside and go and work in a school garden, for example, or if not, even bringing that into our classroom. So Jan was talking about having his own aquaponics set up and the students coming in each day and just seeing and getting excited about the small growths that they were seeing in the plants that they were caring for, and just getting their hands dirty, and the feeling that they might have of feeling very uncomfortable and dirty and not wanting to do it initially. But for some students, by the end of that experience, they actually love it and they love the connection that they've made with soil and with nature.
Yeah, we spoke about a similar thing in our group, we spoke a little bit about giving students, if possible, as much experience as possible in real life context. In, you know, we are quite constrained in our actual space here at school in Paris. So we have a philosophy of Paris as a classroom. So we do go on a lot of field trips. And if you can, we've got the opportunity to go on field trips because, you know, Paris has got many, many things you can go and visit, which are real world, shall we say. So I think that's a key factor in, particularly when we think about maybe nature connections, as you said, Catherine. I think that if you can give students the opportunity to really understand what nature is by being part of it, understanding the fact that we are part of it, we are having an impact, everything is connected, et cetera, which then allows them to maybe make connections with their learning and how the learning can continue to develop their understanding. And maybe that will then encourage them to, you know, take action on their own, not necessarily just in school. Maybe they will go out to a local park and, you know, do some nature observations. Maybe they'll inspire siblings to go out, and just to kind of build an understanding that as human beings, we are part of a larger system. And I think that gets lost a little bit. Kind of sometimes at school, we just teach the lesson, we go home, we come back, you know, and kids are kind of not necessarily taking that learning home or taking it elsewhere. And I think that's a huge part of how educational systems could change. You know, we say the words lifelong learner all the time. How much does that actually happen? That's my kind of thought here. How can we now really start to help students understand, yes, the issues, yes, the solutions, but also how they are part of everything in what they do and what we do as human beings, as part of nature.
I just wanted to connect on that too, because Dan and I work together, and it's not just the words. It really has to come from everyone buying in, and that starts with honest communication from the very, very top, looking at what do we have in place, what is working, what is not working, but like really being open to just the challenges of it. And one of the things I really take is that, you know, these types of changes, they don't just come quick and easy and fast. There are going to be setbacks, but embracing that and using as more learning opportunities for that community, because the school itself is part of a community in Paris with other schools, and how are we looking for those connections? But it's not enough just for the teachers in the classroom with the particular students. It has to be like a mindset, but it does take time. And I think we can't beat ourselves up too much, because we want things to be happening, and we just have to be patient and really just keep going with it. That's all.
I was having a one of my darker moments recently, and I was reminded by a friend of ours that we're bridges, and I'm seeing Victoria in our room today, and you know, I met with my little group of students who are going to go to Monaco, and they're looking at creating more green spaces. And so I said, well, we've got an expert in our school on gardening. And so, you know, I bridged across to introduce them to Victoria, who's doing some amazing work with the early years and composting and gardening. So I think that that's what I really value in these groups, is this, you know, these bridges and connections that we're making, and what Eve said with this sort of belonging and hope. And it's a really healthy thing to have these connections here together. Any more thoughts on what you noticed and felt?
I'm just going to connect to what you said, Zoe. We work at the same school, but we're different campuses that you need to get public transport to. And I was feeling a little siloed. I work with some people who also share beliefs and values that I do, but the actual implementation is kind of, I'm more of a initiator in that. And when Zoe and I chatted the other day for the first time, I left energized, and I left like almost recommitted and wanting to do more. And she's connected me with other people. So it's almost like my fire was kind of like at that lowing ebb stage. And I was, I'm going to keep going. And now I feel like I'm back. Wow. So yeah, so thank you. I mean, thank you for this group, and thank you for the opportunity to connect. I've got a book list already going from just this meeting. So yeah, thank you all. And it's been lovely meeting you.
Just a quick one, sorry if I may, with Victoria, what you're saying about that fire, we all need it. But I also think, Daniel and Heather, what you're saying about in the classroom and pulling all these different nature connectedness things that we're doing with them has the added additional sort of benefit of us providing exactly what you're talking about, Victoria, for our students. We may well have quite a lot of individual students who are interested. And if we are able to bring them together and maybe, Zoe, bridge what their interests are and motivate them, then not only do they feel they're more likely to go ahead and do more with it, but Daniel and Heather as well, I guess we're more likely to get those adolescents in. One of the conversations we had was that it's very easy to get the primary, well, very easy, but there's more motivation sometimes with the primary kids to come and do things and make things. And it's harder once they hit 15, 16. And so maybe we need to be those, that kind of, that bridge that motivates and brings those adolescents together as well, and allows them opportunities to feel that they can make changes.
I'm going to make sure that we collect everything that we put in the chat today. So don't worry. We'll send a follow-up email and make sure that all the links are in that email for you, in case you haven't managed to click on everything, because there's some really great resources coming through there. But I'd like to now hand it over to Jan, if I may, to close us out for the day. And so thank you, Jan.
All right, thank you all very much. My name is Jan Dijkstra. I'm the sustainability lead at the International School of Geneva. and I'm also part of the team that started up this special interest group. And it's been a real pleasure listening to you speak. And the things that came to mind for me were that together we're a bit like mycelium, right? I think together we're a little bit doing the underground work, and we're not always appreciated. And here and there something mushrooms up, but I think together we're super strong. We're a super organism. So if we can feel that connection here today, I certainly did listening to you, and there are quite a few new faces for me, and I really appreciate you and the work that you do. And I think I speak for Kyle and Phil and Zoe and myself when we say that we brought this group together because we feel that there's this community and that together we're stronger. So thank you for everything that you do, and for bringing hope to each other. I think it's sort of fairly spontaneous, and all we need to do is keep gathering. So we are planning further webinars, right? Our ambition is to host a webinar every month so that we sort of can come together and sit around the hearth and tell our stories and share and sort of also perhaps getting comfortable with sharing some of the experiences that are tougher, right? Some of the setbacks, which I'm sure we all experience, and finding ways of supporting each other through those, right? And I think it's, I was reminded by something I listened to recently that all learning is seasonal as well, right? Not just in the school year or with the classes that come and go, but also in the phases of our own lives on different scales, different time scales, how we have to be gentle with ourselves, right? There's this beautiful quote by Bayo Akomolafe that I keep returning to, which is that these are urgent times. We need to slow down, right? We cannot afford to rush whatever it is that we're doing. And I think, you know, giving ourselves a little bit of time on this early morning here by listening to each other's stories and sort of tapping into the warmth of who we are, right, in the midst of everything that's happening around us in the world, I think is so important that we reconnect with that, the simplicity of just getting together and being together and listening to each other's stories. So thank you again. What we want to do is to document this session, and I think this is also an ECIS tradition, and we want to take a picture. Thank you, everyone. I think this is the time for us to go back to everyday life. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for connecting, and let's take it forward, pay it forward into our days and our communities, and I look forward to seeing you again in our next webinar, which we will announce shortly. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care. Have a lovely day.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Everyone,
See you
take
next
care.
time.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.